You think you overthink because that's just your personality. You've probably said it yourself. I'm just an overthinker. My mind never stops. That's how my brain works. But I want to gently challenge that belief. Because what if you've been mislabeling yourself this whole time? What if overthinking isn't who you are, but something your brain learned to do? Just sit with that for a second. Think about this. You don't overthink everything. You don't overthink how to breathe. You don't overthink walking. You don't overthink brushing your teeth. But certain situations, a message left unseen, a small change in someone's tone, a decision that feels emotionally risky, that's when your mind goes wild. So ask yourself, if this were truly your personality, wouldn't it show up everywhere? Exactly. Which means something else is happening here. Let me paint a picture. It's late at night. Your body is tired, but your mind is wide awake. You replay a conversation that already ended. You analyze what you should have said. You imagine how it might have sounded to them. Then your mind jumps forward. What if this happens again? What if I made the wrong choice? What if I lose something important? Your thoughts feel urgent, important, almost necessary. And the worst part? You don't even realize you're doing it anymore. It feels automatic, like your brain just hijacks the night. And during the day, you look normal, you function, you smile, you get things done, but inside it's loud, constant mental noise. And people around you, well-meaning people, say things like, just stop thinking so much. You worry too much. Relax, it's not that serious. And you nod. But inside, you're thinking, if I could stop, I would. That's the part no one sees. Here's the truth most people never tell you. Overthinking is not a thinking problem. It's a safety behavior. Your brain isn't trying to torture you. It's trying to protect you from embarrassment, from regret, from loss, from emotional pain. So it keeps thinking, just in case. And at some point in your life, maybe very early, your brain learned this lesson. Thinking more keeps me safe. That belief settled in quietly, and over time, it became a habit. This is why telling yourself, stop overthinking, never works. Because habits don't respond to commands. They respond to understanding. And once you understand why your brain does this, the shame starts to dissolve. You stop seeing yourself as broken. You start seeing yourself as someone whose mind adapted to something real, something meaningful. So no, this video isn't about fixing you. It's about revealing something you were never taught. The psychology behind overthinking, the part no one explains, the part that changes how you see yourself forever. Because once you understand this, you don't fight your mind anymore. You finally start working with it. And that's where everything begins to shift. Imagine waking up already tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your mind never really shut down. Your eyes open, and before your body even moves, your thoughts are already running. You think about what you need to do today, then about what you forgot to do yesterday, then about a conversation you're going to have later, and how it might go wrong. It's like your brain skips the present moment entirely, and you might not even notice how often this happens, because it feels normal to you. This is the quiet tragedy of overthinking. It becomes so familiar that you stop questioning it. You might be standing in line somewhere, or driving, or lying in bed with the lights off, and suddenly your mind grabs onto something small, a look someone gave you, a message that felt off, a moment where you weren't sure how you came across, and then it starts. You replay it, you analyze it, you imagine different outcomes, not because you enjoy it, but because your brain is trying to solve something. Here's the problem. Most of the things overthinking tries to solve aren't solvable. They're emotional. And emotions don't respond to logic the way problems do. Overthinking often shows up strongest in people who care deeply, people who don't want to hurt others, people who don't want to make mistakes, people who learned somewhere along the way that being careful mattered. Maybe you grew up in an environment where words had consequences, moods changed quickly, approval felt conditional, so your brain adapted. It learned to stay alert, to read between the lines, to anticipate reactions, to prepare for what might happen. At the time, that adaptation made sense. It helped you navigate uncertainty. The issue is, your brain never realized the danger ended. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes even more sense. Our ancestors survived by predicting outcomes. The human brain evolved to ask, what could go wrong? What should I prepare for? What happened last time I did this? The people who thought ahead survived longer, so the brain wired itself to repeat past experiences. This is where overthinking began, not as a flaw, but as foresight. But modern life changed faster than the brain did. Now, instead of avoiding predators, the mind scans for social threats, rejection, failure, disapproval, uncertainty, and it treats them like danger. This is why overthinking feels urgent. Your body reacts as if something bad is about to happen. Your chest tightens, your breathing shifts, your muscles tense. This isn't imagination. It's your nervous system activating your stress response. Your brain believes it's helping you survive. And when survival mode is on, thinking becomes relentless. What makes overthinking so exhausting is that it never gives closure. You think your way into clarity, but you rarely think your way out. Instead, each thought leads to another, and another, until your mind feels crowded, and silence starts to feel uncomfortable. Sometimes even scary. Because when you stop thinking, you're left alone with your feelings. And feelings are unpredictable. This is the part many people don't realize. Overthinking is often a way to avoid feeling. Thinking feels controlled. Emotions feel risky, so the mind keeps analyzing to stay ahead of the emotional wave. But the more you think, the less you feel. And the less you feel, the more disconnected you become from yourself. You may notice this pattern. You hesitate to make decisions, not because you don't know what to do, but because you're afraid of choosing wrong. You delay action. You wait for certainty. You hope for a sign, but certainty never comes. So you stay stuck, and then you overthink that. It's a loop, a deeply human one. The hardest part? From the outside, no one sees the struggle. They see someone capable, thoughtful, functioning. But inside, there's a constant pressure, a mental hum, a feeling of always being on. And slowly, without realizing it, you start to believe something painful. Everyone else can handle life better than me. But that belief is not truth. It's exhaustion talking. Overthinking doesn't mean you're weak. It means your brain learned to protect you in a world that once felt uncertain. The problem isn't that your mind thinks too much. It's that it never learned how to feel safe enough to rest. And in the next part, we're going to talk about something important, something that shifts everything. Why overthinking isn't something you need to eliminate, but something you need to understand. Because once you do, it stops controlling you. I've often wondered why the mind clings so tightly to certain thoughts, why one small moment can echo for days, while dozens of good moments disappear without a trace. And when you look closely, really closely, you realize something important. The brain doesn't replay memories randomly. It replays what felt unsafe. Here's something most people don't know. Overthinking isn't caused by too many thoughts. It's caused by a nervous system that doesn't feel settled. This is why telling yourself to calm down rarely works. Because calm isn't a thought, it's a bodily state. And when the body is tense, the mind follows. This is also where neuroplasticity quietly changes the story. Neuroplasticity means your brain rewires itself based on what you repeat. Every time you overthink, your brain strengthens that pathway. Not because it wants to hurt you, but because repetition signals importance. So the brain assumes, this must matter, let's keep doing it. Like seriously, your brain is just following instructions. But here's the twist. The very thing that makes overthinking exhausting is also what makes it reversible. Because habits built through repetition can be softened through different repetition. Not force, not control, awareness. There's another layer here that often gets missed. Overthinking creates cognitive dissonance. That uncomfortable tension between two truths. I want certainty, but life is uncertain. So the mind keeps thinking to close that gap. But no amount of thinking can eliminate uncertainty. That's why the loop never ends. And eventually, something subtle happens. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop listening to your body. You rely only on thought. And thought becomes loud, relentless, crowded. Here's the part that shifts everything. Overthinking is not your mind malfunctioning. It's your mind overfunctioning. It's doing too much of one job, prediction, and not enough of another, presence. And presence doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from feeling safe enough to stop. This is where many people get stuck. They try to solve overthinking with more thinking, analyzing why they analyze, researching endlessly, watching video after video. And look, understanding helps. But insight alone doesn't calm the nervous system. Safety does. There's a reason overthinking gets worse at night. When distractions fade, when the world goes quiet, your body finally has space to speak. And instead of emotions rising gently, thoughts rush in to drown them out. Thinking becomes a shield, a distraction, a way to stay in control, because feelings feel risky, unpredictable, messy. But here's the gentle truth. Your mind doesn't need more answers. It needs more permission. Permission to pause. Permission to feel without fixing. Permission to exist without constantly preparing. Slow, reflective delivery. You don't stop overthinking by fighting your thoughts. You stop by showing your nervous system that it's safe enough to rest. And once the body learns that, the mind follows. This is the moment where many people feel something shift. They stop asking, what's wrong with me? And start asking, what did my mind learn? And how can I teach it something new? That's a powerful question, because it turns self-judgment into self-understanding. And in the next section, we'll talk about exactly how that change begins. Not in theory, in real life, in small human steps that don't require you to become someone else. Because the goal isn't to silence your mind, it's to help it finally feel safe enough to breathe. If you're ready, we'll keep going. Here's where most advice gets it wrong. People tell overthinkers to think positive, be logical, distract yourself, just stop. But none of that works for long, because overthinking isn't a logic problem, it's a regulation problem. And once you understand that, everything changes. Let me say this clearly. You don't break the overthinking cycle by controlling your thoughts. You break it by changing your relationship with them. That's a big difference. Short pause. Think about this. The more you fight a thought, the more important your brain assumes it must be. So it brings it back. Louder. Stronger. Like, come on, dude. Haven't we all experienced that? Step 1. Stop treating thoughts like commands. Here's something subtle but powerful. Not every thought is a message. Some thoughts are just nervous energy translated into language. Your brain is a meaning-making machine. When the body is tense, the brain looks for a reason, so it creates stories. What if I mess this up? What if this goes wrong? What if I regret this forever? Instead of answering those thoughts, try this. I notice I'm thinking. That's it. No argument, no correction. This creates distance. You're no longer inside the thought. You're watching it pass. That small shift engages the observing part of your mind, the part that isn't panicking, and slowly the intensity drops, not instantly, but noticeably. Step 2. Regulate the body. First, this part is crucial. A dysregulated body cannot produce a calm mind, so stop asking your mind to relax when your body is still on edge. Gentle regulation works better than force. Slow breathing, longer exhales, stretching, walking without your phone. These aren't self-care cliches. They directly stimulate the nervous system's calming pathways. And when your body receives the signal, "We're okay right now," your mind eases up, not because you told it to, but because it finally feels safe enough to do so. Step 3. Replace rumination with containment. Overthinking spreads because it has no boundaries. It leaks into everything. So instead of trying to stop it completely, contain it. Tell yourself, "I'll think about this later, at a specific time." Set a short window, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And when the thought appears outside that window, remind yourself, "Not now." This teaches the brain something new, that it doesn't need to think all the time to stay safe. And over time, the urgency fades. Here's the strange thing. When people stop overthinking, they often feel uncomfortable at first. Silence feels empty. Stillness feels unfamiliar. Because chaos became familiar. Thinking became identity. So calm feels wrong. That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It means you're doing something new. This is where compassion matters. You didn't choose this pattern. Your mind learned it. And unlearning is not a straight line. Some days will be quieter. Some days the thoughts come back strong. That doesn't mean you failed. It means your brain is adjusting. There's something else worth mentioning. Many overthinkers are deeply intuitive. They sense things others miss. The goal isn't to lose that sensitivity. The goal is to stop letting it run your life, to use your mind, without being used by it. At some point, something shifts. You still think deeply, but the thoughts don't spiral. You still care, but you don't drown in it. You pause more, react less, and one day, almost unexpectedly, you realize the mind is quieter, not silent, just calmer, more spacious. And that's when you understand something important. Overthinking wasn't your enemy. It was a signal, a sign that your nervous system wanted safety, not suppression. And once you gave it that, the mind followed. In the final section, we're going to end gently. No pressure, no big promises, just a quiet moment to reflect on who you were and who you're becoming. Because this journey isn't about fixing yourself. It's about finally understanding yourself. And that changes everything.